And the threats to our nations, they don't sleep. They're watching our every move. Iran, Russia, China, North Korea, ISIS, Al-Qaeda. They may be watching this right now. Our military should not be mistaken for a cable news gabfest show. We don't care what you look like. We don't care who you voted for, who you worship, what you worship, who you love. It doesn't matter if your dad left you millions when he died or if you knew who your father was. We have been honed into a machine of lethal moving parts that you would be wise to avoid if you know what's good for you. We will not be intimidated. We will not back down. We've seen war. We don't want war. But if you want war with the United States of America, there's one thing I can promise you, so help me God. Someone else will raise your sons and daughters.
I want to make it clear that the views expressed by our hosts are not considered the official stance of MBR Views. Remember, this is all about having fun and enjoying the ride.
Find us on the
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Into the Weeds podcast here on Military Broadcast Radio. I'm Amber.
And I'm Laura.
And thank you guys for joining us back here. And today I'm actually really excited about this show or this episode because we're going to be speaking to an archaeologist, and I am a huge history nerd.
It'll be a good time.
Yeah, and I have all these different questions swimming around in my head, and I just want to know his perspective more than anything. And I'm not looking for his, absolute, definitive answer on things, just his perspective more than anything else. So we are joined today by Mark Ziese, and we're going to bring him up today, or now. I'm still learning. Hey, Mark.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Very good. And yourself?
Oh, I'm making it. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mark. Well, can you tell us who you are, what you do, why you're interested in archaeology, and why you picked the field that you're in?
Boy, a lot of questions right now.
I know.
Well, my name's Mark, and I went to the field to do archaeology, to practice archaeology for the first time as a college student. I went just to have fun and to learn a little bit and get credit. But along the way, I thought this is really fascinating. This is something I'd like to do for a living.
Yeah.
And then, unfortunately, I learned that it's very difficult to be an archaeologist for a living.
I would say.
I bet.
Yeah. So anyway, I ended up pursuing academics all the way to the level of PhD and got a job teaching. And I spent the next 25 years teaching at the university level, college and seminary, actually grad school.
Mm-hmm.
Had a wonderful time. Capped it off by getting to serve as the dean of a school of theology. Yeah,
Oh, awesome.
Cool.
well, you say awesome, but
Well, sounds cool, but maybe not what you were looking for.
if they promote you to a dean, that means they're taking you out of the classroom, and for me, that was,
Yeah, completely understand that. Not your element.
no.
I get it.
I like teaching. I like work. Administer, taking care of budgets and organizing policy and people was not as exciting for me. So I stepped away. I retired, and right now, what I'm doing is I organize and lead trips to the lands of the Bible.
Okay.
So we spend about half the year somewhere in the Mediterranean basin, places like Israel, Jordan, Palestine, Turkey, Egypt, Greece. with different groups of people, which is really fun because what that means is that I
Mhm.
can still teach. So it's
Mhm.
like teaching in the classroom, only better because we're outside.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I get
Hands on.
and I get to talk about archaeology, and I don't have to sleep on the ground. So it's
That's good. That's always good.
go to the buffet bar at the end of the day.
And what is the name of your company or your touring?
Our group, you can find us online by searching Bible Land Explorer.
Okay.
Bible Land
Bible Land
Explorer.
Explorer. Yeah.
Okay.
I actually went on your website and was looking around, and it looks really interesting. My husband and I were talking about booking something sometime.
You say it's quite the place to be at this moment in time.
Well, yeah.
I was gonna say maybe put a pin in it, but yeah, no, it would be a very cool adventure to take for sure.
Well, we're on our way to Greece in about a week and a half. Well,
Oh, I've always wanted to go to Greece. I almost took an impromptu trip there once.
It would not have been smart.
But no, that it sounds like a good time.
Yeah, Greece is a very fascinating place. Yeah, I met you one day in chapel at I guess it was now Johnson University, Florida. We were
okay.
sitting next to each other, and we just talked. You told me that you went to Ozark Christian College,
Yeah.
and I'm from Oklahoma, and so yeah, uh, I know all about Ozark, and being here in Missouri now. I just I've seen a lot of people who are from there and really admire and respect what they do and what they have to say. So
Well,
so
that's great.
yeah, so when I thought about doing a podcast, I was like, he's an archaeologist. I want to pick his brain.
Okay. Well, be careful. It's there's a lot of dust in there.
No, that's all right. So can you tell us some of the things that you actually the actual sites you've excavated on or worked on
Mhm.
everywhere?
Sure. I would say most of my field experience has been in the country of Jordan,
Oh.
which is there on the the eastern end of the Mediterranean. That's
Mhm.
not where I started. I spent my first field experience inside of Israel, and actually it was inside Palestine, in the West
Oh.
Bank, and
Oh, really?
Wow.
we were working on a site that was believed to be a possibility, or it was a possibility that this was the site of Ai that is mentioned in the book of Joshua.
Oh,
And
wow.
we were just sort of flirting with the possibility this might be it. In the end, it didn't work out, and it's most likely not the site that we were hoping
Mhm.
it would be. But it was a
Mhm.
great opportunity for me to get my fingers dirty.
Yeah,
Mhm.
of course.
That's what launched, I suppose, my own interest and career. And then I went over to Jordan and spent the next probably 20 years off and on every other year working in and around the area of Amman,
Oh,
Jordan.
okay.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Most of our work was at sites that are right on the border between what we would consider to be Ammonite country,
Mhm.
from the name
Yeah.
Ammon, Ammonite, and
Mhm.
Moabite, which is the people group to the south. So we were
Mhm.
sort of trying to tease out the cultural differences between these two groups. Of course, both of these groups were very active in a period of time that we call the Iron Age, which is
Mhm.
hundreds and hundreds of years before the time of Christ.
Yeah. Yeah, Petra is something that is very interesting to me.
Yes, Petra is fascinating. Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody needs to visit Petra sometime.
So what is Petra
I was
and
just thinking that. I
yeah.
was like, I don't know what that is, and there's probably other pea brains out there
Yeah.
like me that don't.
What is that? What is that? Well, you can kind of hear the word. You can hear the word Petros. You can hear the word
Mhm.
rock in there. It's a
Mhm.
Yes.
city that's literally carved into the rock, into a canyon,
Mhm.
and
Wow.
it was first settled, or people started living there in the time of the Iron Age. Again, the same time
Mhm.
we're talking, but it really didn't flower. It didn't really catch catch fire until a period of time, just a couple of hundred years before Christ. And the
Okay.
people who were there were called Nabateans,
Mm-hmm.
Nabatean people. They put Petra on the map, and they carved these wondrous tombs in the faces of cliffs
Mm-hmm.
that have very elaborate facades, columns, and all kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps you've seen the third Indiana Jones movie. There's
Yeah.
In a
there's
minute, but yes.
famous bit where they are trying to find the Holy Grail, and they go
Mm-hmm.
inside one of these Nabatean tombs, push on a wall, and find this Crusader hideout. I pushed on all the walls and all the tombs. None of them opened.
Oh no.
Anyway, it's a
Darn.
fantastic site out in the desert, and it was made famous by the Nabateans, and they used it as a caravan stop for the spice route. So the camel,
Yeah, I remember hearing something about it being like a bank or a financial spot.
a lot of money flowing through there for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was an economic
Okay.
hotspot.
And what did they have to do? Do they ever appear in Bible literature of any kind?
No, not Petra does not. There
Mhm.
are the region does. The
Mhm.
region has a different name, Seir, or perhaps the word Edom. Uh,
Mhm.
Petra is famous for its red rock, and the word Edom in Hebrew, Edom, is derived from this idea of red. And Esau, you may remember the guy
Yeah.
named
Mhm.
Esau. He's sort of the red guy. Um,
Yeah.
it comes from the land of the red rocks, and so there's this
Okay.
mystique, hiding in the shadows. But it's not really mentioned by name. The site is not mentioned by name in the Bible.
And the
Hmm.
people aren't, well, I know the Nabateans aren't, but anybody associated with the Nabateans, are they?
There is a king. Boy, now this show is called what? Into the Weeds. Okay,
Yes.
here we
Yes, sir.
there is a king Aratus, or a leader Aratus, who is mentioned in the New Testament, who probably
Mhm.
comes from that part of the world. So there are some, teeny tiny tidbits, sprinkles.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Okay.
it's on the periphery of the biblical story.
Mhm. I was just wondering why you would exert most of your energy in
And
Jordan and around that area.
yeah, well, the place where we were working was further north than Petra. As we
Okay.
said, on the sort of the boundary between Ammonite and Moabite country. The
Mhm.
Moabites, where we did a lot of work, are mentioned regularly in the text of the
Yeah.
Old Testament.
Mhm.
Probably the most famous story everybody knows about is the story of Ruth, who
Mhm.
Ruth herself. There's a book, in the Old Testament named Ruth. Ruth herself is from Moab. She's a Moabite,
Mhm.
and she gets involved with a Jew or an ancient Hebrew, and of course is brought into the story.
Yeah, and the lineage of Christ.
Yes, yes, indeed. And David
Yes.
before that, so
Yes.
pretty important lady.
Yeah. What did you find there in that area?
That area, we excavated a number of cities is probably too large of a word.
Mhm.
Settlements, which could have numbered in the thousands, at least one or two of them. Um,
Mhm.
Mapping these sites and excavating these sites, we found cities that had amazing defensive systems, walls, houses, tools, food, skins, burials, all kinds of things. So
Mhm.
it's a great opportunity to learn more about the, I guess we would say, the background of the Bible,
Mhm.
the backstory.
Yeah.
I think one of the, you may want to go this way later in our discussion, but one of the things that archaeology really does is it helps us to understand the ways of life that, for people. It doesn't do a very good job of helping us understand historical particulars or individuals. So we don't, we it's hard to find Moses, but we find, evidence of slaves or evidence of, life ways in Moses. So we learned a lot about Moabite and Ammonite life ways as a result of our excavations, if that helps a little.
Yeah, it helps. Did you have any questions about it, Laura?
I'm just listening and observing. I don't know as much about the Bible or about archaeology. I'm just taking in the information, but I am a listening ear.
Okay. Well, we're going to go to commercial, and then when we come back, we will get into some of Mark's experiences that led him to a deeper faith in God and in Christ, and we'll be back.
It's the guts and it's the glory, 100 stripes, 100 stories. It's the Pledge of Allegiance on the 4th of July. It's them handwritten letters from home. It's them sleepless nights alone. It's his newborn baby he left with his wife. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, lay down, here's a line. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, for these stars and stripes. Hey, from the fields of Indiana to the swamps of Louisiana to the golden coast of California, Uncle Sam's the only family he's got. His purple heartbeat won't stop, and his 18th birthday was the day he was born. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, lay down, here's the light. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, for these stars and stripes. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, stand on the front line. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, pay the ultimate price. He was the man of the house when he was born. His family is proud but torn. But if you knew him, you would understand. He was raised on how to be brave, just to see the flag still wave. And then he came home with only one hand. 'Cause Mr. Red, White, and Blue, lay down here to lie. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, for these stars and stripes. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, stand on these front lines. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, he'll pay the ultimate price. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, lay down his life. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, for these stars and stripes. March in line, march in line. Hey. Hey.
Opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Into the Weeds podcast here on Military Broadcast Radio. We've got archaeologist Mark Ziese with us today. And right now, Mark, I'd like to ask you about how archaeology has solidified your faith in Christ and in God, and the experiences you've had at different locations, either as an archaeologist or as a tour guide, or even as a teacher or a dean, that has just affected your life and kept you doing what you're doing.
Well, that's a great question. And it dives right at the heart of things like identity and mission, which give our wheels traction. For me, let me begin this way. I think back to a book that was written many years ago now, 50 years ago or more, by a British author named Kenneth Kitchen, and he talks about what archaeology does for biblical studies, how the relationship between these two disciplines. And he says it does three things. He says archaeology, it illustrates, it illuminates, and it confirms the biblical narrative. And all three of those could be defined, I suppose, in careful ways to make them more distinct. But when you talk about something that illustrates, the biblical story, this goes back to what we mentioned in our previous segment about how the study of archaeology gives us ideas about how people lived in the past. How does one get food? How does one build a tent? What kinds of things do people have to do in order to protect themselves? Weaponry, wall building, water system. And so when we talk about illustration or illumination, those two kind of bleed together. Archaeology can this is where 90% of, I think, of our work is it illuminates and gives us pictures or backstories that help us understand character action. In the last segment, we mentioned Ruth the Moabite, for example, and there's a lot in her story about agriculture and gleaning in the fields and wheat, and of course archaeologists find not just literally the seeds of the past or the pollen seeds in the past from the past, but the jars in which these things were kept. And so we and the tools by which grains are harvested, and so we can say things about agriculture as a result of that. But that's not gonna, that's not earth shaking. That's not gonna that's probably not gonna drop anybody to their knees, But what it does do, that sort of work does, is it begins to show us, and I think this is really the important thing for our discussion and for our listeners to contemplate. It demonstrates for us the fact that the story that we have, or the stories that we have in Scripture, are not like from a make-believe land. It's not Narnia. Never. It's a place that was real. And there's real people, real struggle, life and death that rise to the surface in these stories. And so archaeology does, the lifting there as we about that. Now, the other thing that Kitchen talked about is the confirmation part. This is rare, but it happens. Every so often we find, a tidbit that will confirm some aspect of the biblical story. For example, we read in, I'll just pick an example. I just came from Greece, and I'm going to be going back to Greece. And one of the sites I visited in Greece is a site called Thessaloniki, which is located in the north part of the country. Paul wrote a letter to them, to the folks there, Thessalonians, Anyway, in the book of Acts, the story is told about Paul visiting Thessaloniki. And in the midst of that story, there's there's some people that step up who are city or civic leaders. And the author of the book of Acts uses a very, very weird word to describe them. He calls them polytarchs. In the
Okay, yeah.
polytarchs. What in the world is a polytarch?
Hmm.
And nobody knew what a polytarch was. And what is this word? Well, lo and behold, would you believe? It's been 100 years ago now, but in some of the excavations that took place in one of the city gates, they found a stone which listed, I think there's maybe 7 or 8 names in Greek carved into the stone. These are like the city fathers, and they're called polytarchs.
That's
Wow.
awesome.
Wow.
I mean, there were people,
Next.
there were actually people who said, this word, they just made, Luke just made this word up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, now it's literally cut into stone. Now it's
And you
not,
find evidence for it. Yeah.
yeah, it's not exactly the time of
Yeah.
Paul, which would have been really sweet, but it's a century or so later. But still, it demonstrates the truthfulness of the fact
It
that
really existed. Yeah.
yeah, you think,
Yeah.
wow, that's amazing. And
Yeah, definitely.
that's the kind of confirmation, that I'm speaking of.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Hittites. Weren't they like considered to not have ever existed, and now they were from
Wow.
Turkey, right?
That's right. The Hittites in central Turkey, people doubted the existence, and then lo and behold, we find an entire empire.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about them? Do you know anything about them?
Oh, I've not.
Not your area of expertise.
Well, what I know is that they flourished in a period of time we call the Late Bronze Age, which corresponds more or less with the time of Moses, and just immediately before the main Hebrew history sort of kicks in.
Yeah.
So we're talking 1400, 1300 BC. They arise as a contender. The other superpower of that moment in time was Egypt, and the two heavyweights go into battle with each other, the Hittites and the Egyptians, and there's several occasions where they meet in battle and seem to have pretty much fought to a standstill. Although it is interesting that the Egyptians do go home when it's over. So I think maybe the Hittites were a little bit stronger. But we have lists of names of the kings. We have laws, the Hittite laws that have been found. Whole cities in the area of central Turkey, which relate to Hittite culture, and even pictures, little diagrams of Hittite men. You can always spot a Hittite because they have little curly shoes. Their shoes are and they kind of curl up like Santa's elves. So if
kind of like a jester thing. Yeah. That's
anybody with little pointy curly shoes on, you might say, hey, you got any connection to Hittites? I don't know.
how good is that? Yeah.
Now the Hittites are the same ones that were really brutal, weren't they? They used like hooks in the nose and stuff to lead people around, if I remember correct.
Well, I tell you, the ancient Near East was a pretty brutal place, and everybody learns. You may be thinking of the Assyrians, who
maybe
probably would be the chief of the brutal peoples. At least their propaganda, they wanted you to think so.
Okay. I remember seeing carvings or pictures or something of the Israelites or the Egyptians, I can't remember which, being led somewhere with hooks in their noses. And for some reason I associate it with the Hittites.
Well, you could very well be right. I mean, every one of these ancient Near Eastern kingdoms were pretty tough. Those were hard.
Yeah. Now, what do you say to skeptics of the Bible when they're talking to you, like in personal conversation or in an academic setting or whatever? How do you prove the Bible to somebody from an archaeological standpoint? other than what we've already discussed?
Sure. Well, I guess I would probably, take them down the path of illumination and confirmation, those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
That the thing is, and I don't, I'm cutting to the chase here. The thing is that the proof will only carry you so far. And
Yeah,
I think
most definitely.
instinctively we all know this. And
Mm-hmm.
what we can do is demonstrate that the biblical story is truthful.
Mm-hmm.
Demonstrate that that these things, many of these things, let's put it that way, many of these happened.
Mm-hmm.
Can I demonstrate causation? Can I demonstrate why they happened, or did
Mm-hmm.
God truly speak?
Mm-hmm.
At that point, the archaeologist cannot speak. I mean,
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
we can't lean into that. And I
Mhm.
suppose this is, philosophical here, but this is where we have to talk about that leap of faith.
Uh-huh.
We can show archaeology helps us talk about the reasonableness of
Mm-hmm.
the text or the reasonableness of God, but it can't take it all the way home. And
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
this is the wonderful and terrible thing about
Yeah.
biblical faith.
No doubt. Yeah, definitely.
Well, I mean, I guess the concept is that he wants you to have faith, and if he gave you all the proof, then would be the point. I mean, I also understand the argument against that. I'm kind of, in a middle ground, but no, I definitely, I definitely see that. A bunch of little things definitely add up for a bigger picture, and that's the most important part.
Mhm. No, yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I see just from okay, so all of the different creators on YouTube and wherever that cover different either supernatural things or alien things or whatever.
Like
When they,
cryptids.
yeah,
Yeah,
cryptids or
cryptids. Yeah.
anything that
Mhm.
they talk about, it almost reaffirms my faith in God even more because of the weird things that they talk about and because of the weird things that I've seen in my life or experienced. It's just like, okay, God, I see what you're doing. You're really cool there.
Well, faith is a very personal thing, and
Mhm.
I can show you, I can point you in a direction, but in the end, this is a personal choice whether to believe or not to believe, to take it
Yeah,
seriously or
definitely.
not to take it seriously. And I would argue in the end, we have the person of Jesus Christ, and as ultimately that is sort of the icing on the cake.
Yeah.
Jesus rose from the dead, and archaeologically speaking, we can't prove or disprove that. Uh,
Yeah.
but theologically, those who did believe it, um, they took it so seriously that for them it did cost them their lives. I mean, they
Mhm.
you die for a lie. Would you die for a myth? I don't think so. And
No.
I actually did think of something, but just before I forget, because oh my goodness, what do you think about the Shroud of Turin then? If you're thinking about, I don't know if it's crap or not. You just said that, and I was thinking
yeah,
you
yeah.
can't prove it, and then I was like, well, what is? I don't know. I just want to hear from someone who knows what they're talking about.
What about the shroud? I tell you, the shroud is pretty interesting, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Mhm.
darn
Hmm.
interesting, and
Hmm.
there's so many factoids about it that
Hmm.
cause me to scratch my head. How is it made?
I get that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But in the end,
Hmm.
it does not line up with the
Hmm.
description about the burial of Christ that we read about in the Gospels. Uh,
Hmm.
Mhm.
the bit about him being wrapped, and the
Hmm.
word that is actually used there, the Greek word that's used there,
Hmm.
is a word for a bandage or a wrap,
Hmm.
Mhm.
and in the same way that we might think about a mummy
Excuse me.
Yeah.
wrap.
Mhm.
Um, uh, a napkin placed over the face. I mean, there's several elements of the burial of Christ that are described in the narrative that don't accord very well with the shroud.
Yeah, the only way that it could really happen is if they took like a long piece of cloth, put it on his front and on his back, and then wrapped him or something like that. But even then, it would be distorted and
I would think. So I don't know. I'm not sold, but I haven't studied it probably the way I'm an Old Testament guy, so I run out.
Totally understand. Yeah. And I mean, like, I even like my thought process with it when I first heard of it, it was like what I said prior to that was, you know, we need faith. And I feel like having like that exact like concrete of proof kind of would almost, I don't know. I feel like it would almost kind of negate the faith that we're supposed to have. So I feel like the idea of that sort of thing existing is less believable to me for that reason, and maybe a few other reasons. But I was just curious what your opinion was on it, since yeah.
Well, yeah, no, it's just like any of the relics and artifacts and stuff like that are in different places. You know, people hang their hopes on this one thing, and it's most likely not authentic. You know, and it's like, oof, having that much faith in something like that.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, it's just
we all like
people.
Mementos. We all like mementos, don't we?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah. And it's just interesting how people latch on to one thing or another, and if it ever comes out that it's fake or whatever, their face in this one object has been destroyed. And so then now their faith is destroyed. So they weren't putting their faith in the right thing. They were putting their faith in a thing, not in Jesus and in God. So
yeah, shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket. I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to go to another break. And then when we come back, we are going to talk about different archaeological sites and different people and what Mark thinks about them and what he can inform us about. So stay tuned.
Be right back.
I think of me before the war, but that 24-year-old is just a shadow on the floor. I've lived and died in hell 8 times. I'm gonna take this last one and bring it to the light. No one sees the struggle behind the walls of war. Signs say all are welcome, but we can't get through the door. Tell me why no one hears the things we say. Tell me why you just choose to look away. Always step for what's right when what's right isn't just fighting for a country that won't stand up for us. Sometimes I feel like giving up. Lay down the dreams I got and let them turn to dust. But I still got fire left in my blood. No soldier should be left behind or feel like there ain't enough. Tell me why we gotta beg for you to change. Tell me why you ignore the 88. Always step for what's right when what's right isn't just fighting for a country that won't stand up for us. Oh, we lay down our lives, and you can't do what gotta beg for you to change. Tell me why you ignore the 88. Tell me why no one hears the things we say. Tell me why you just choose to look away. Always avoid what's right when what's right isn't just fighting for a country that won't stand up for us. Tell me why, tell me why, tell me why, tell me why, tell me why. Just stand up for us. Just stand up for us. Just stand up for us.
Opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
Hello, and welcome back to Into the Weeds podcast here on Military Broadcast Radio. We're back with Mark Ziese, and I sent him an email the other day. I should have sent it a long time ago so he could get a little more into where my head was, but that's okay. So when I was a kid growing up, I learned, that all of the past civilizations basically were illiterate, dumb, didn't amount to what we know or what we learn. And I'm coming to find as an adult now, being educated from different podcasts, just like I was telling you, Joe Rogan, you learn that these people groups really weren't that stupid and they really weren't that simple.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of want your take on the people groups. And I know this is a broad area. I'm just putting this out there and then you can do with it what you want. But from the pyramids, the building of the pyramids to Göbekli Tepe and Samaria. So, and as a Christian, I see the book of Moses, or not Moses. I see the story of Moses, not Moses. What am I saying?
I don't know. I'm following.
I see the story of Noah. And you see and you know that there was something very big going on at that time. And so learning more and more, and then also learning a little bit about the book of Enoch. And I'm not sure what your take is on that. And I'm not even sure what my take is on that. I'm just very curious more than anything. I'm learning that I think these people were a lot smarter and a lot more technologically advanced than we give them credit for, at the very least.
Just in different ways than us. Yeah.
Yeah. And as I told you, I listened to Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock. And a lot of people call them pseudoscientists because they believe in this
cataclysmic.
Yes,
cataclysmic.
Yes, event. And whether it be an asteroid that hits and floods the earth, or just our biblical narrative of Noah, I'm not sure where I'm going with that, but I think that people were a lot more intelligent than we give them credit for, is what I'm going for.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And one doesn't have to look into the stones of the past to draw that conclusion. One can simply look in the book of Genesis, which is a great place to begin. And if you want to talk about beginnings, go all the way back to the creation of humanity as described back at the very first two chapters of the book of Genesis, where it says there that man, or Adam, humanity, was created in the image of God.
Image of God. Yeah.
And there's a lot of speculation and wonderment as to what that might mean. The word that's used there in Hebrew is the word selim, which is the word sometimes like a statue, or perhaps even an idol, in the sense that this is a figure that is a copy or a representation. We are
Okay.
made in some way as copies
Mm-hmm.
of self. And
Okay.
obviously I'm not God. There are things I can't do. I can't be in a lot of places at one time or know
Yeah.
everything, but there is something about who I am, my identity. There's something about me that is of the divine essence. And one would have to be crazy to suggest that the ancient man was stupid. I mean,
Yeah.
one of the practices we tried early on was a bit of flint napping. We talk about some of the primitive weapons where we're flinting. We're napping flint pieces to make a blade. That's very hard to do.
Yeah, definitely.
And we think of that as being Stone Age. This is very primitive. Or that's just a starting point. But yeah, I mean, you talk about the pyramids, or you move there and you talk about sites in ancient Turkey, or sites in southern Mesopotamia. And there is one thing that unites all of these at just a glance, and that is just amazing artistry. When you think about the pyramids, when you think about the scale, and you probably know as well as I do that there's a lot of crazy ideas as to how they were able to cut stones.
Sound being one of them.
Sound, yes.
Yeah.
One of them, flying saucers. Okay, it's all kinds of but the truth of the matter is that whatever method was used, it's amazing technology. And this is something that was done by primitives, or people who have little awareness of their world. In fact, if anything, one might even suggest, on the basis of the development of language, that ancient peoples were more clever than we are.
Yeah,
absolutely.
When you start studying cuneiform, which I had the curse or the blessing of doing a long time ago in graduate school, ancient Mesopotamian writing, it's very complicated, thousands of signs.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
Thousands of signs. Yeah. And the system is very complicated. And if anything, if we speak of the evolution of written systems, written systems have become more primitive with time. Written systems have actually become more simple.
Yeah.
Yes.
In time. And that doesn't, what does that say? That talks about the genius of antiquity, not the the primitive activity. So all of these sites that you've described, all of them share just fantastic technological skills in stonework and artistry. We can talk about making of artifacts as well, carvings and things that are astounding. So I don't know. I'm just kind of speaking in general towards your topic.
Yeah.
If
What
that's
were you going to say? Oh, I thought, I thought you were going to say something. Yeah, no. Yeah, I feel betrayed kind of by the school system and my parents, that I didn't learn that these people weren't as intelligent. And so we just kind of pretend like everything we do is new and amazing, but yet now our kids can't read or write cursive. My kids can, but
I say, don't you want me into that?
my kids can, but like my nieces and my great nieces and nephews, they can't.
I'll never learn it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember my son learning it at 3 years old, and you too.
Cursive?
Yeah. Yeah, you did.
I learned it in the first grade.
Yeah, she did. She started learning it at 3 years old, but anyways, yeah. So you're right. Language is going backwards again, or going backwards in some ways, and
Mhm.
then I remember, that Solomon said nothing new is under the sun, and so I'm just very intrigued when I start learning about all these new civilizations, new to me civilizations that I've never heard of, um, or had no idea even was a possibility. I mean, there's just so many weird ones, you know?
Sure. Well, it's fun that you mentioned Göbekli Tepe, the one in
Mhm,
the site that's located out in Turkey. That's
mhm.
probably been one of the more recent and exciting finds.
Yeah,
Um,
from the 90s.
yeah, much more
Mhm,
recent than
Mhm.
pyramids or Sumer. Uh,
mhm.
and to be, I was there maybe 4 or 5 years ago now.
Oh,
To stand on top of this very barren hill and
mhm.
you look down from the top of this hill which used to be covered in trees, and
Yeah.
today it's barren, but the evidence is that it was once forested, or at least very green, not like today. And you look
Mhm,
down, see this valley, this beautiful upper Mesopotamian plain below, and then see these enormous circles of stone. And there's been, I don't know, 3 or 4 of them that have been excavated, or at least they were when I was there. But I think
mhm.
that the remote sensing has identified another 5 or 6. So there's a whole collection of these circles that are astounding. And then inside the circles are these stones that rise up out of the ground, um, 10 meters, I don't know,
Mhm,
10 meters high. And some of them are plain, but some of them are highly decorated. It's a single
mhm.
stone, and we're
Yeah.
talking about, 10 tons, 20 tons, I don't know. Huge
Mhm,
weight. And here they are standing in the midst of these circles, and you're saying,
mhm.
what's going on here? What
Yeah.
is this a worship site? Is this a shrine? Is this a temple? Um, and just the mystery of that site invites all kinds of theories.
What's your thoughts on it?
Gosh, I don't know. When I was there, and this was, like I said, 5 or 6 years ago, the I think the original excavators' idea was that this was a seasonal shrine that was visited by these hunter gatherers. They would come here, once a year or twice a year, at certain times of the year anyway,
Mhm,
to worship, to sacrifice, to do their thing. I think more recent evidence is suggesting that there was actually domestic units there as well, so that it was more permanent than we first believed.
oh, okay.
So, the debates swirl. Is it a single use kind of site, or is it truly a settlement? And
Mhm.
I think only additional excavations are going to, give us more on that question. The bones,
Yeah.
the seeds, everything that's there is fascinating too, because I think the other really cool thing about the site is that it not only rests on this ridge, overlooking this plain, but it also
Mhm,
rests on a very real line that sort of separates the deeper antiquity from more recent antiquity. We would refer to that as the beginning of the Neolithic period, or the Neolithic revolution, the
mhm,
domestication of plants and animals, and the beginning of city life. So we're really
mhm.
at the spark. We're really at the epicenter in some ways of modernity. That's probably,
Mhm.
I'm using that word in a way that's probably overstated, but we're on we're
Yeah.
on the we're on the cusp of the modern world, standing on top of that ridge, and it
Mhm,
invites us, it begs us to investigate.
mhm. Now, how I've been very confused diving into history and archaeology as far as it goes with like Neolithic period and stuff like that, or even further back, I guess, to the period of the Denisovans and the what's Neanderthal and all of these things.
Mhm.
What from a Christian perspective, how do you understand that? How do you explain that?
Whew, yeah, that's a good one. Well, maybe without trying to give you a definitive answer, what I might be able to do is explain to your listeners why this is a problem, or why it's, why are we asking the question?
Uh-huh.
And part of the reason why we're asking the question is because for us as Bible readers, or maybe as Genesis readers, we should say,
Mhm.
the book of Genesis is purportedly a book that comes to us from the hand of Moses.
Mhm.
Moses, according to tradition, wrote Genesis, and he writes this book of Genesis in his lifetime, which we're now 1,200 years, 1,300 years, 1,400 years before the time of Christ. We're back in this late Bronze Age, if you will.
Mhm.
Here's Moses writing this story, and he's I think writing Genesis as a way to give his readers a setting. He's giving his readers a backstory,
Mhm.
because for Moses, he's leading the people of God into the land of Canaan, and they're asking him questions, and he's trying to give them answers to the questions. Where did we come from? Who is this God who's telling me to leave the place where I am, Egypt, and go to
Mhm.
place, Canaan?
Mhm.
Who is this guy? What are his credentials? Can he be
Yeah.
trusted? Can he be
Yeah.
trusted? So
Mhm.
Genesis gives us our our backstory, our identity, and so one of the things we learn right up front is that God is creator. He created everything,
Mhm.
and because he is creator, he has certain authority to say things. You
Mhm.
know, right? And by the way, he has asked people in the past to leave the place where they are and go to a new place, like say Abraham. And
Mhm.
there's a whole bunch about Abraham in the book of Genesis as well. And so Genesis gives us the backstory for the people of God in the time of Moses. But it's not meant, and here's my point, and perhaps I belabored it too far already. It's
No,
not
Not at all.
it's not meant to give us a complete reckoning of deep time, or it's
Mhm.
not meant to write a complete narrative of how
Mhm.
everything led up to this moment. And when you think about the book of Genesis, I mean, where does Abraham step into the story? Abraham steps in chapter 11, the end of
Yeah.
11, beginning of 12. There stands
Mhm.
Abraham. Abraham, if you believe he's a real guy on the ground, and I think there's reason to believe he is, he's
Yeah.
walking around about 2000 BC.
Mhm.
2000 BC is when Abraham steps onto the stage. Now we're talking about Turkey and early humans and things like this. The site that we've just described, this Göbekli Tepe, we're
Mhm.
talking about a site that is 10,000 BC. We're talking about something that's 8,000 years older
Wow.
than the time of Abraham. And so,
Wow.
I mean, that's a lot of time.
Yeah.
And what does Genesis have to say about all of this, what I like to call deep time? The answer is very little. Very
Yeah.
little. You know, God made it all, and oh yeah, and by the way, and here we are now. And so,
Mhm.
we're sort of caught. What do we say? Well, we want to know more about this. We want to more know about that. And Moses says, "Nah, that's not relevant to the story that I'm telling you." And
Uh-huh.
so we ask questions of the book of Genesis that the book of Genesis
Mhm.
was not written to answer.
Yeah,
Okay, that's actually a really good
that's a good answer for that.
explanation. I've
Yeah.
I've actually never heard that explained like that.
Yeah, no, that's a really good way to put it.
Because so many people get hung up in the minutia of this happened and this happened and this happened, that they refuse to believe any of it because, oh, well, they didn't talk about this or they didn't talk about that, and I've noticed that out with people that I watch, or pay attention to, that they're looking for hard, definitive answers about different events in the Bible as a reason to believe it. And instead of just trying to look at the whole picture, and I know you got to start somewhere, but at the same time, it's like the Bible, I think, is just there. A lot of people call it basic instructions before leaving the earth, but I think it's more of a owner's manual than an instruction booklet.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And I would even be so bold as to suggest that we're not leaving. The plan is that we're going to be around here a while, so we need to take care of this home.
Yeah, no, definitely,
Absolutely.
definitely. Okay, so I guess we'll go to another commercial and then we'll get into the weeds about all the weird stuff that I want to ask somebody about, and no one has taken the bait, so I'm gonna have you answer it.
Some of it might be a little outlandish, but that's okay. That's what we like here.
It is, but the thing is as I get deeper in my faith and learn more about God and about myself and about the world around me, I'm just learning that God's pretty cool and this earth is pretty interesting. So we're going to go to a break, come back and join us.
All right, here we go. Window daydream numbs my mind. Turn on the lights, I'm still blind. Speed up, slow down, wheels keep on spinning. I play the game, I'm not winning. I've been east, I've been west, I've been put to the test. I've been high, I've been low, I don't know where to go. I've been lost, I've been found, I've been spinning around. Here's what's left of me now. Fly, broken soul, 500 miles from my home. Can you save me from this hill? Can you save me from myself? I've been east, I've been west, I've been put to the test. I've been high, I've been low, I don't know where to go. I've been lost, I've been found, I've been spinning around. Here's what's left of me now. test. I've been high, I've been low, I don't know where to go. I've been lost, I've been found, I've been spinning around. I've been east, I've been west, I've been put to the test. I've been high, I've been low, I don't know where to go. I've been lost, I've been found, I've been spinning around. Here's what's left of me now. To me now.
Opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
Welcome back, everybody, to Into the Weeds podcast here on Military Broadcast Radio. Our guest is Mark Ziese, an archaeologist, and I'm going to pick his brain about all the weird stuff. But first, Alora wants to ask a question, which is a good question.
Yeah, I was kind of shooting it at my mom during the break there, so I could figure out the right way to word it. So if the way I word it isn't correct, my apologies, but it's still a question that I am curious about. So a big hang up that I know a lot of people have with Christianity, and it's also a big thing that I see a lot of Christians debating over, is like New Earth versus Old Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I was just curious what your thoughts are on that as someone who's actually studied it, and what do you think?
Sure. Oh, that's a great question. And I have, I've danced around that pole in the course of my career, and actually been in trouble a few times because of it as well.
I bet.
I can imagine.
The two perspectives is the young Earth, old Earth. These perspectives are built around the question of how do we understand the date of creation? Was Earth created a very, very, very long time ago? Everything we see around us, is this very, very old, or what we see around it, is it very young? Is it very new? And unfortunately, like the political landscape, everything gets so wacky and polarized to where the left can't speak to the right and the right can't speak to the left. The same thing is true with respect to creation and arguments about the age. And I would as a beginning point go back to what I said in the last segment, how there is a whole lot that we don't know.
Yes.
A whole lot we don't know. Moses gave us a narrative that begins with the fact that everything that we see is the result of the hand of God. And so I would wherever you land on this argument, or this way or that way, I think it's important biblically and from the perspective of orthodoxy to suggest that God made it all. God is responsible for it. Now, did he do this a long time ago, or did he do it just a little while ago? That is something that is very difficult to assess. And here's why. Okay, imagine with me. Let me give you a make-believe, scenario. Okay, it's day. How many in Genesis? What God creates everything in 6 days? And
on the seventh day he rested.
Yeah, he takes a break. He doesn't rest. Be careful. It says he ceases. He ceases. Oh, yeah, everybody always says yes. He ceases. He's all tuckered out and he's sitting on the bank,
Yeah.
He's wore out. But he ceases doing that because it's Moses writing this story. He's saying, hey, this is what God did, therefore we need to take a break too. So anyway, that's the point. But what would happen on day 8 if you were able to invent this really cool time machine and you load into the time machine all of your instruments and all of your scientists, we all go back together to day 8. Okay, are you with me now? I'm talking about a very
Yes.
literal days of creation. Just
Yeah, of course.
argument. You land on Earth on day 8, and of course the biologist gets out his saw and he cuts a tree down and he counts the rings, and the geologist wades out into the stream and he picks up a rock, and you get the idea.
Yeah, definitely.
Geologist, flips the baby cub over and looks at his belly button. Did Adam have a belly button? Never mind. The point is that everybody would come up with different answers,
Mm-hmm.
and all of the answers would have one thing in common. They would say that the Earth was fully mature.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, what did the earthworms eat on day 8? They ate dead leaves.
Yeah.
How long had those leaves been dead? A few hours, right? Okay. The point is that the system has to be fully developed, top to bottom, left to right, fully developed. The trees had rings, the rocks were worn as if they'd been worn smooth, by thousands of years, et cetera, et cetera. There were canyons on day 8, So everything would have the appearance of age. And is that in some way make it a lie? Does that make it false? Well, no, it's what you need to have a fully functioning ecosystem.
That's a great explanation.
You start thinking about this, you think, well, maybe we're making mountains out of molehills. But having said all that and having thought about it, to answer your question, I just thought I'd throw that out for your thinking.
Oh yeah.
Having thought about it, I now would consider myself to be an old earther. And for those of you who probably have been listening to my words, you saw that coming. But I think what we've got here is a very old Earth that there's been a lot of time, a lot of water gone under the bridge. The young Earthers are all going to recoil, and they're all going to, say, well, what about the genealogies? Because that's always
you're a heretic.
You're a heretic. Yeah. What about the genealogy? This one lived that so long, and he birthed that one, and so forth, and so on, and so forth. And I would say that those genealogies are representative, not to be taken literally. To say that this one is the son of that one, or this one is the ancestor of this one, does not necessarily mean father-son relationships. It could be relations in general. So anyway, that's my sneak around that, which is going to satisfy some people, but not going to satisfy other people. But I don't know if that helps.
No, it definitely helps.
Old Earth would be the way I'd go. But I'm not an evolutionist in the sense that I think that it all just happened random chance. I think
I get that too.
Scripture is pretty clear that no, it's not pretty clear. It's precisely clear that God created all the. It doesn't say exactly how it was the process, used, but God is the prime cause behind it.
Yeah, and if you look at the Big Bang, I mean, God said, "Let there be light," and then there was light. So, bang, there was light. So
you have to call that something. Sure, yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, so we're going to get into the weeds and talk about all. So, I grew up in Oklahoma with a lot of Native American folklore and being around the Comanches and the Kiowas and all of the other tribes that are there. And so I grew up believing, and I still kind of believe. Actually, I do believe that Bigfoot is real. And, there's all these folklores all around the world about red-haired giants and Bigfoot and all these weird things. And like in Haiti, for instance, if you talk to a native Haitian, they'll tell you about the water people that are around the shores and things like that. And there's just all these different folklore and things like that. How, as an archaeologist, do you guys or do you deal with that kind of stuff? I mean, what do you make of it? Do you think it's just all made up, or do you think there's morsels of truth into it?
Wow, that's a good question for sure. Well, goodness, the history of creation, if we can call it that, the history of the earth is a history of extinctions, right? I mean,
Yes.
it's a story of one extinction event after another.
Yes.
And I think the one thing we would all agree on, whether we agree or disagree with about the existence of Bigfoot, is that there were once a lot more critters than we see today, and therefore it should not be surprising. I'm not surprised to envision relics in biological relics that are still out there. I mean, we go to the bottom of the sea and discover a new plant, a new animal, or a new fish. And all the time they find another bug in the Amazon, and everybody, is oh yeah, we can buy that.
Yeah.
At some point, though, I mean, you got to think it's one thing to find a fish at the bottom of the sea and a bug, in the Amazon, but the big hairy guy that's running around Oklahoma. Come, at some point, you think a camera would catch him somewhere. I don't know.
I think he's going through a portal. That's what it is. He's interdimensional.
I don't know how I feel about that.
He's
just to throw that out there. I've definitely heard that theory. I'm very open to listening to what people have to say.
Yeah, me
and
too.
I think I don't solidly believe in a lot. I'm just open to things, and it's interesting to have these conversations. So don't take anything we're saying too seriously. Don't be like, oh, what did I get myself into? These crazy ladies.
Well, myths and stories and legends and those kinds of things are very much a part of the human existence. We imagine things, we tell stories about things, we create stories to explain why, are things the way things are. And so, many of these characters, or many of these figures are part of that, mythology, which does resonate across the human spectrum.
Yeah. Have you ever experienced anything weird or unusual that you would like to share with us in your life, or anything like that?
Well, I've never been abducted or anything that I know of. No, I guess
No, anything that you've seen that just can't be explained, no paranormal instances, or just question them, maybe.
Well, I tell you, I grew up in Oregon. Okay, I grew up out in the deep wood, and
definitely
everybody in my part of the world was either a fisherman or a logger, and so Sasquatch, Bigfoot. I mean, that was very much a part of our world in Southwest Oregon. And I, as a child, was terrified, quite literally terrified.
I bet.
So was I.
Peeking in my window at night. But I thought he did peek once or twice, but can't prove it.
I understand that. I think my thing with a lot of like the cryptids or different things is I do think there is something to be said about multiple cultures from different parts of the world that don't seem to have interacted, having similar stories. And I think that's where I'm more apt to being, I don't want to say believing in certain things, but being open to it. And I think that's more where I come from, but I don't even know where but I definitely do think that's weird. But I mean, maybe people interacted and we just don't know about it yet, so.
Yeah, me too. And that's, where I was going to go with it too, but I forgot to. But yeah, I'm just really open to how common things are around the world when it shouldn't be.
Well, or maybe it should be. I mean, what are driving what are driving these stories? What are driving these fears? What are driving these ideas that there's something? the one commonality from culture to culture is you and me, you know, people, and there's a certain commonness that we all have, regardless of where we live and what color our skin is.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
No, you're right about that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I've just been very curious because I've had some paranormal experiences, and if you actually are very interested in it, you can go and listen to one of my videos where I talk about being a Christian, you know, and how as a Christian I wasn't looking for a paranormal experience. It came and found me, you know, and what do I do as a Christian when no one wants to talk about it? Everyone thinks you're weird or crazy. And then so you're just left on your own dealing with this. And it's like, how do I explain it? What do I blame it on? Do I blame it on demons? Do I blame it on, you know, spirits? What do I blame this on? Because it has happened. So
yeah, and especially since you and I had like a very similar experience, not telling each other about it and it being related to the same thing. It's just like, it's just weird, just unexplainable. I mean, it doesn't mean it's one thing or another, but it's just like, why?
yeah, I guess that's why my brain is just so all the time on thinking about all these weird things, because when you experience something like that, that is absolute definitive proof that something exists outside of your reality, as some people would just go crazy. For me, I just get more curious and more curious.
Well, you know, I've spent some time in Africa, and we'll be back in Africa a little bit later on. And when you talk about some of these kinds of experiences in some cultures, they don't bat an eye. They say, "Oh, absolutely,
yeah, absolutely."
And yeah, they may call you crazy here, but may not be viewed as crazy in another corner of the world, where one's assumptions perhaps have a different beginning point.
Yeah, I guess it's just hard being in a Western world with Western Christian mindset, where all of that is just taboo. And then, but then, like you said, you go to a different country or know different people, cultures in your own country that talk about these different things or experience these different things. But yet, like me as a white person in my own community, I'm looked at as a weirdo because I feel or think or question these things that happen.
Well, we're in the West, we're materialists, right? I mean, very much materialists. Everything can be explained scientifically, and this is part of the reason why it's challenging to talk God, you know, in the West right now, because we're not open to anything that is beyond you know, our five senses. To talk about something else, other, beyond, and faith, of course, you know, figures into all of that. To talk about faith is hard.
Yeah, it is.
In a materialist world, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. Well, I guess we can't really go any further into it because I have all kinds of questions and we would be here for hours. But Mark, can you just kind of tell us what you have planned, what's upcoming for you, and where people can find you?
Sure. Yeah, thanks for asking. We're going to be heading off to the country of Greece a little bit later in the summer. After that, we're going to be heading down to Tanzania. Every year we do African safari as part of our adventuring. It's not exactly Bible lands, but it's a lot of fun. So we go down there for fun. We'll be glamping on the Serengeti.
Wow.
That sounds so nice.
Just amazing. My wife says the Serengeti is her favorite spot because everywhere else we go, talk about the wonder of, you know, the works of man, but when we go to the Serengeti, it's all about the work of God.
Yeah, no, I could see that.
Yeah. But then next year we have a pretty robust schedule. 25 will be touring in the areas of Israel, Palestine again, assuming, God willing, some of that mess settles down. We'll also be in Turkey, and we'll also be back in Greece and in Egypt. And you can read about all of those types of trips, details, prices, etc., on my website, which can be searched online at Bible Land Explorer. So if you just search Bible Land Explorer, I'll be the first thing that will come up. We also try to post videos every week on our YouTube channel. So I'd be delighted if you'd subscribe. And you
of course.
Find us on YouTube at Bible Land Explorer, and we'll see you there.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mark, for this discussion. And I hope to keep this line of communication open. And if I have any questions, I'm going to contact you.
And if I find any big feet in the ground, sands of Turkey, I'll let you know.
You know who to reach out to.
And if you ever find anybody that is an interesting person that I could talk to, send them my way.
Okay, I'll do that for sure.
Okay, thank you, Mark. You have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much for your time.
Amber, thank you, Alora. Nice to meet you both.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, everybody. Well, thank you guys for joining us, and thank you, Mark, for participating. I know I I hit you with some questions that you weren't prepared for. My mind goes in a million directions, and sometimes I want to talk about one thing, and then So anyways,
yeah, it happens. Me too.
I don't know if I'm ADD or not, but I probably am.
We have a lot of good questions and just not a lot of time to ask. So it's kind of all around.
Yeah, I know. Okay, well, thank you guys, everyone, for joining us here on Into the Weeds podcast here on Military Broadcast Radio. And if I'm ever able to talk again, that would be great. And I hope that everyone has a wonderful day or night or wherever or however you're seeing this, whenever you're seeing this or however you're seeing this. Goodness gracious, I cannot talk at all.
We just really appreciate you guys for listening to our show today.
I know. So thank you guys, and come back and join us.
Thank you so much. Bye.
That's the show for today, everyone. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with an all-new show. And remember, you can listen to us again and again. The podcast of this radio show is available right after we go off the air tonight, anywhere that you can get your podcast episodes. And thanks for joining us today. I'd like to take a moment to talk about something close to my heart. Military Broadcast Radio is doing incredible work to support our veterans and bring their voices to the world. They rely on your generous donations and your dedicated volunteer hours to make it happen. I encourage you to consider supporting NBR in any way, form that you can. Use this QR code that's attached to the picture, or you can go to our website at mbradio.us. That's Mike Bravo Radio.us to learn more about how you can donate or volunteer even just an hour a week from your home. Help make a difference in the lives of our veterans, because once again, we're all here for you and not for us. We're giving our veterans a voice.